Welcome to the Brunswick Residents Candidates Forum. We're in Merri-bek on the lands of Warrk-Warrk people. We want to acknowledge that this was Aboriginal land devastated. Thanks very much for coming tonight. My name's Maclellan. I'm the Brunswick Residents Network. Sorry for that. So we're a network of local residents, people who live, work, play in Brunswick. There's some leaflets in the back if you don't know us, and we have a monthly newsletter. We encourage you to sign up for those who haven't been involved. We're not affiliated to any political party, we're not endorsing any candidates for this election, but we do think it's important to create opportunities for people to meet those who want to be our representatives for the next 4 years. And that's why we've organised the forum tonight, and thank the candidates who've come to join us. For the first time in this election, the state government has changed the structure of Merribek Council. Previously there was a ward with three councillors in the south, covering the whole of the south. Under the new regime there's 11 wards in Merribek Council, 4 in the south, and each with just one representative, rather than the 3 we had previously. Last week we hosted candidates from the 2 wards in the west, Brunswick West and Warrk-Warrk. 9 out of 10 candidates turned up, and we had a good crowd to listen to their views. And tonight we're doing 2 more wards. The first for Warrk-Warrk here in Brunswick East, and then at 7:30 tonight, Rundutso ward, the other ward in the east, which is on the Eastern Sydney Road. We do have some apologies tonight, and as you can see, there's only 2 out of 3 candidates on the platform for the first session. Jenne Perlstein, who's running for Victorian Socialists, has another commitment, and she sends her apologies, can't be here tonight. Similarly, in the next session, we've had a couple of apologies. Thomas Nash, who's the Labor candidate for Rundutso, contacted us late afternoon, and he's very sick and can't come tonight. So he sends his apologies once again. Similarly, Bulla Almonos, who's with the independent grouping with Oscar Yildiz, is unavailable to come as well, so she sends her apologies. So there's, as you can see, there's lots of time for questions tonight. The way we'll operate is I'll launch off with a couple of questions. Each candidate is going to introduce themselves for 3 minutes at the beginning. We've asked them to be brief, we've asked them to say who they're representing, whether they're part of a ticket or an alliance in these elections, and whether they actually live in this ward. And then we'll open up for people to ask questions from the floor. Each candidate also gets a chance to wrap up at the end. And there'll be tea and coffee afterwards, a chance to re-bash the councillors, potential councillors, before we go on to the next session. So a few basic things when you get to question time. Can you please introduce yourself? Say whether you're in a group, and say if your question is directed to a particular candidate or to both of them. Secondly, can we ask for a question? No speeches. There's a chance to talk at great length to people afterwards, but we'd like to give as many people a chance to speak tonight from the audience. And finally, keep it nice. You may have firm opinions on the topic, but let's talk about policy rather than personality, and we'll go on from there. So thank you very much for tuning out tonight. And I'll ask firstly our 2 candidates to introduce themselves, then we'll get into some questions and answers. On the far right of myself, your left, is Jenne Perlstein. Your left, my right. Jenne Perlstein, representing the Australian Labor Party for this ward, and Adam Pulford from the Greens. Adam, for people who don't know, has been a councillor and indeed the mayor of Merri-bek in the last term of office, now looking again for a seat in this ward. So, Jenne.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nations, their ancestors equality was never ceded, and I pay respect to any First Nations peoples here tonight. As you heard, I'm Jenne Perlstein. I'm the Labor endorsed candidate for Warrk-Warrk, born and resided in Merri-bek for most of my life, with the last 31 years in East Brunswick. I've been a social worker and educator, currently tutoring in the Masters in Social Work at Melbourne Uni, Indigenous Peoples subject. Since childhood, I've been a community activist for social justice and human rights. You may have met me as the captain of the Wills for Yes referendum campaign last year, one example of my staunch allyship with First Peoples for 40 years. This combination of professional and community experience motivates me to offer community leadership and run for council. I deal with the same local issues that you do. I bring a mature listening and advocacy range of skills, conflict resolution, practical problem solving, skill in governance and policy development to my potential representation of you at council. What I would like to see achieved by the next council is that First Peoples and Merri-bek Council treaty be brought to fruition, including handover of the Bullet site in Glenroy to the Warrk-Warrk. I'd like to ensure council delivered community services in family and health services and aged care, and increasingly affordable housing. A social cohesion plan to be furthered to address the lowest level of cohesion in 17 years, focusing on all discrimination, but including ageism, loneliness, mental health and solo households. To maximise parklands, green streets and carbon zero targets, and solar community batteries and innovation in electric vehicles. Timely local consultation about traffic management and housing development, with parking, traffic, height and heritage concerns embedded in the process. Timely responses from council when you make contact. Prioritising cleanliness of streets and public toilets, repairing footpaths, roads, stormwater drainage. Resourcing of core social cohesion organisations such as sporting clubs and neighbourhood houses. Safe separation of pedestrians, scooters, bicycles and cars, addressing traffic hazards, speed and parking management, that acknowledges car-dependent community members. I'd like to advocate for accessible tram stops, better public transport, and cost of living awareness in all council decisions. Consider me as an approachable and authentic local council candidate. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. I'm just reading off my phone now, just so you're texting. So I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the lands of the Warrk-Warrk people as well, in my respects to their elders past and present. And just to shout out to the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria, the elected council of traditional owners from across Victoria, who are leading the journey towards treaty, helping us to right the wrongs of the past and create a better future together. So I'm Adam Pulford, the current mayor of Merribek City Council, and I was elected as a Greens representative for North East Ward back in the year of 2020. I now live in Brunswick East with my husband Victorian Socialists there. We live just near Fleming Park. Got to have a lovely walk through to this venue. Actually bumped into Jenne along the way. And I love this community. It's a thriving, diverse and creative community, and it's the kind of community that when people find, and you don't want to leave. And that's my story. I was born in the Northern Territory, but I found and made home here in Merri-bek. And I don't see myself living anywhere else after kind of laying some roots here. We can be who we want to be in this community, and I think that's something that we're all proud of. Actually, at the moment last night, there was a woman who came and spoke to me, and she said, I was born in Brunswick, I'm still living in Brunswick, and I'm going to die in Brunswick. And I think that sums up a lot of our feelings towards that community. I'm really proud of what we've achieved together over the last term in council. We've invested in our community facilities, including the soon-to-be opened Ballan Place, which is right next to Brunswick Bars, which is going to be a community and arts hub. We've created 5 more parks, and there's 3 more in the process of being built. We've planted more trees. We've made it safer on our streets by reducing speed limits and by bringing forward and accelerating the rollout of safe cycling and walking infrastructure. And we renamed our council. So we've decided to cut ties with a name that connected us to a past of slavery and dispossession, and we've now embraced a name that embraces the 65,000 plus years of local Aboriginal history in this area, and that's the story we get to tell about ourselves now. While there's lots to love about our community, there's more that could be, there's so much more we can do to make things better, and even to protect what we love about our community. As the housing and cost of living crises are hitting people hard, what we actually love about our community, the diversity and the creativity, is threatened to be priced out. We don't want to see that happen. So affordable housing is a huge priority for what I think for council, but also all levels of government to be acting on. The climate crisis is worsening. We need to keep creating new parks, planting more trees, and making it easier and safer for people to get out of their cars and adopt low emissions transport. And we need to be part of a treaty with traditional owners. So thanks for having me here. I look forward to tonight's conversation.
One of the advantages of having a microphone is I get the first question. You both mentioned safety and speed, ratrunning. In the past 2 transport strategies, Moreland and then Merri-bek Councils talked about 30-kilometre trials. The science is telling us that in fact in quiet residential streets, after 15 years, Merribek's now getting 40k. There were supposed to be 2 trials in MITS 2019, neither happened. MITS 2024 talks about 1 trial. What are you going to do about 30 kilometres per hour in quiet residential streets?
I think having worked as a social worker in acquired brain injury rehabilitation, speed of cars is something that I see as crucial to be reduced because not only everything from noise and pollution, but the risks of accidents, it's really important. And I particularly think in quiet residential streets that people need to be able to be encouraging more of those trials and more towards a reduction of those speed limits.
I also support those trials. We have finally rolled out 40 kilometres per hour on all our local roads. It has been 15 years in the making. I suspect council is partly to blame for that, maybe mostly to blame. It is also tricky with changing speed limits. You need Department of Transport approval, so that's part of the process as well. The good news is Yarra has rolled out some 30 kilometre per hour speed zones, and so I think the state government requires it to be a trial, which makes it more expensive for councils to do, because there's a lot more recording and monitoring you have to do. With Yarra kind of being the first council to bring those 30k zones in, hopefully the state government learns from these experiences, relates the rules, and it makes it easier for councils to adopt it. So it's good that we've lowered the roads to 40 kilometres. We do need to lower to 30k's. And the reason is, makes sense, right? If a car's going slower, a driver has more time to react if someone comes out in front of them. And also the vehicle itself is less dangerous because it's not got as much force behind it. So that's why lower speeds matter. That's why they save lives. And also, if there is an accident, they do happen, you're less likely to have a serious injury. So I do support lowering speed limits, and I think there's some exciting news that council is applying for a grant to bring money in at the moment with a TAC. So watch this space.
So my follow-up question on that is, where in the ward would you recommend the first trial be? Because of course the first trial has to be in Brunswick East. Where would it be?
That's a good question. I think Brunswick East was the first area where we get to go down to 40 k's an hour. So while lots of other local roads had to change, a lot of the local roads in this area did because they were already 40k. It makes sense to start these things around schools, I think. Part of it is to just increase safety for students coming and going to school. So kind of maybe in that Fitzroy, well, just above Fitzroy North. The kind of lower southeast section would be my route, but we have transport experts at council, so you don't want to be making decisions, you want to listen to those experts.
Look, I have to agree with Adam on this one. I think you'd be logical where like schools, kindergartens, childcare centres, need to look at all those sort of facilities. Aged, there might be places for aged people, people with disabilities, but I think exactly where the surveys and so on show us that the higher speeds are, and that exactly I've got a strong belief not only on these issues but on many. We need to both consult with the community, but also hear from them what's actually happening for them. I was recently out walking and someone described the ratrunning and someone goes down Hutchinson Street after the John Street closure and an accident with a child occurred. So I think we need to listen to those things, but absolutely to the experts and show the evidence. I think that's what I would be guided by. Lucky, not an expert in that area, but to have that guidance is key.
So, some questions from the audience. There's one at the back and one here. Can you just introduce yourself and speak loudly?
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm a Brunswick resident.
Just stand up.
Sorry, no worries. I'm Lisa. I'm a Brunswick resident. My question is directed to Jenne. In both the Labor Party's policy, which they released last week, and obviously the campaign material, talk about separation of cyclists and pedestrians. One thing that's not clear is whether the ALP policy supports the reallocation of road space for protected bike lanes on direct on-street routes. As a woman who rides a bike almost everywhere, I'm really not comfortable getting into a creek or getting into an off-road trail. So I'd really like to understand what your position is on the reallocation of road space for direct on-road protected bike lanes.
I might need a bit more information about this because I'm not quite sure what's the implication that you're saying that there's going to be cycle paths through.
More like Dawson Street, like what happened with Dawson Street.
Right.
There was some on-road lanes that were put there. Do you support more projects like Dawson Street?
Yes, okay, thank you. Yes, absolutely. Where that's feasible and where again the experts say that it's possible and that there's appropriate community consultation, I would see that the more of those sort of things we can have to ensure that cyclists and pedestrians and cars and other vehicles and forms of mobility are separated as much as possible.
My name's Leonie Weaver. I'm also a resident in Brunswick East. There are two issues in my mind. Graffiti, which has really defaced so much of our place here. Nothing seems to be done about that. Other councils clean it up immediately and discourage it. And the other thing is, what's happened to the street sweepers? Every time there is a heavy downpour, the place just absolutely floods. The gutters flood because the streets are no longer clean. They no longer have street sweepers. So I think that is I'd certainly like to see the graffiti something done about it.
Yeah, graffiti, we do have teams that go out and remove some graffiti, but it's not our policy to do it on privately owned property. We do provide graffiti removal kits. So if graffiti does appear on someone's property, they can get that kit from council and clean the graffiti off. We have a program where we pick walls and we support local artists to do like street art or like a big mural on it to help, and something that can help deter graffiti on those walls because sometimes people honour that art space and don't tag it. It is a problem. It's a tricky problem. I feel like you could pour kind of as much money into removing graffiti as you wanted to, and you're still going to get on top of it. connecting to your street sweeping comment, Council's recently done a big review of its public space improvement and maintenance plan, and they've looked at how they can change the offering of their services. So hopefully that recent change will see some improvement, but we're going to have to follow it closely and see whether we need to allocate more money to it. The tricky thing in the council budget is it's such a limited budget that when you increase one area, you've got to cut another area. So I think that's a delicate balance of trying to work out the right balance between those different priorities. It's always a large issue, I think, but I have heard through this campaign that people are concerned about the level of graffiti, so it is something we need to look into more.
Thank you. Yes, I've certainly had feedback from the door knocking and talking to businesses on Lyman Street and other places that graffiti is a major issue, and I think that we need to look at ways to work with businesses for a start, on the more business, shops and so on areas, because there is a push from Lyman Street businesses to enhance that area. But also in residential areas, I think to look at more mural and artwork, and I think that at the same time when you're talking about, you mentioned the streets sweeping and cleanliness, again that's been a very big issue for many of the people I've been speaking to, as I'm door knocking, as I've been standing in East Brunswick Village and so on, that the cleanliness of the streets is a major thing, and that people are saying they want the council to be more in touch with those local concerns. And that also, I think it ties in with ensuring not only are streets cleaned more frequently, but also that we look at stormwater drains. I know from my own house, every time there's rain, there's like a flood. So I think that if we can look at unblocking those sort of things, I know that might mean working in with other agencies and so on, to ensure then that areas are kept cleaner, and also looking at places where there are certainly some of the parks and gardens where you get water and then you get dirt going down and clogging the streets as well. So you need to look at ways to bank those things up. But I think the frequent street cleaning, because it's just an issue that everyone has been asking about, so I will try to ensure that that was increased and looked at by the council.
Just briefly before we move on, there is a coating of paint that you can put on. The nut company has it that graffiti won't stick to. So paint that could be looked at.
Question from the back row, gentlemen.
Yeah, Bruce McGregor is my name, Brunswick resident. I'm wanting to raise the issue about the increased population pressure around Merri-bek. We know that's going to continue to increase, and people are going to need their connections to nature and good recreation space more than ever. So the question relates to the Moreland Nature Plan, which ran for 4 years and it expired last financial year. So I'm interested in what your views are about reviewing and updating what would be a Merri-bek Nature Plan and providing sufficient resources for the proper implementation of a Merri-bek Nature Plan.
I think we might have folded the nature plan under another strategy, so I don't know whether it's completely disappeared or whether we just kind of report on it in a different way. But urban forest strategy. Thanks, Thomas. The deputy knows after that. I hear your concern about population growth and the pressure that puts on the natural environment, but also the need for more green and open space. I think it's something that's probably one of Council's most popular programs is our Park Close to Home program, where when developers subdivide land, so that means we're increasing density with more apartments or dwellings are being built on what was only for a one-dwelling lot, we can basically tax them, put it into a fund where we can buy land to create new parks. We can also invest in our existing parks. And so this term we've created 5 new parks, and there's 3 more on the way. That should be open kind of by early next year. As our CDP is specifying, we need to keep doing that, creating open spaces. It's good for social connection, for people's mental health, it's good for our wildlife, it's good for cooling our cities, and we just love our parks. So I would suspect that kind of council's continuing to do that work, it's just kind of followed in a different, or reported on in a different way. If not though, happy to follow that up. And council's been a real leader in sustainability, something that I think our community has pushed council to do, and I think it's something which we'll be proud of. And so I do back council's kind of credentials in this space.
Yes, look, I have to agree with what Adam's saying, and I think absolutely that we need heat mitigation, greening, and people's ability to access parks and so on. And I think it has to be balanced with, again, what I'm hearing on the door knocking and the community connection, that people want to know that infrastructure is going to keep up with the housing development, and I see parks and greening as a part of that. And that we need to continually be balancing that, yes, wanting to provide housing to people, but also at the same time recognising that other areas need to keep up with that progression of dwellings. And so a few people have mentioned to me greater canopies in streets, more access, yes, to local parks and so on. And I would encourage that this sort of program will continue if I was elected. But also encouraging people themselves to be planting, growing their own vegetables, trying to put in as much green. I love the fact that there's, the gardens growing on the footpaths and so on, that people are planting more trees and plants and tree trunks. And I think that we need to ensure that that happens, that wherever there's any space for green, that we do that and try to get a balance between the development that is occurring and people's ability to access those parks and areas.
Thank you. This is a question for, my name's Jan and I'm a Brunswick resident. This is a question for all candidates. Have you got a how to vote card? And if so, who is your second preference?
Yes, Jenny, I've got a how to vote card over on the table over there. My second preference is Joanne Hope from the Socialists, Victorian Socialists, and then of course Adam third. There's only 3 candidates in the area, in this ward, so it was a fairly simple exercise compared to some of the other wards. And that's also part of my own preference for, wanting to be, I see myself as a progressive and social justice person, so that's how I was quite happy with how those preferences rolled. But I also would say that one of the things I pride myself on, and I would want to do as a councillor, is to really collaborate. It's about what the community needs at the end of the day. And my preference for my style, which I've always done, is to work with others to achieve the outcomes, not just putting forward my own ego or my party beyond what others are advising and wanting from the community. So that would be my key priority in nomination.
I don't have that card, I'm not sure preferences.
There's a few more hands. I'm going to throw in one just to stir the pot as well. The state government's brought in The state government's brought in single-member wards. Rather than having 3 councillors in your ward, you've got 1. What do you think about this? And what happens if residents get it done? Serious question. Last council, one councillor was involved in rorting the elections. He was later found guilty, convicted of an offence, of low temporary. I can name some other councillors who I think it does. I'll let your imagination. I'm serious. If you've got a councillor who is either done or who may get sick or pregnant or having a family member or a job change, what happens? So I wonder if you could reflect on the pluses and minuses of this new ward system, and whether you think we should stick with it or go back to the old system of having multiple member wards.
Yeah, so the state Labor government changed the ward more like a Senate system where you didn't have to get, 50% of the vote in a very small area, so the vote was more spread out, which meant it was easier for more diverse democratic, you have maybe more diverse voices around the decision-making table. So I think it's a shame that it's changed. In terms of the results, yeah, I can understand the concern that you have a dark local councillor. I have to say, there is a broad kind of acknowledgement amongst this current group of councillors. I think there has been in the past, and we hope in the future, given our community, that an investment in one part of our community is an investment, in all of our community. And that's why this term we've been investing in community and arts facilities in Brunswick, but we've also been upgrading the Faulkner Leisure Centre. The major project before that was the Glenroy Community Hub. So there is recognition around the council table that all parts of our community deserve investment. It's a challenging decision sometimes because Brunswick is so dense, there's so many people, the dollars you spend here reaches more people, but there's been a historic underinvestment in the north. And so some of our facilities here that are aging are actually even better than, or don't exist in the northern parts of the city. So there's that balance you have to bring. And I would really hope that the new council, even with the single member system, still it doesn't become kind of as parochial as it could, or as territorial as it could.
Thank you. Yes, I think whilst the change is a significant one, there's one, and I agree with everything that's been said. I think that, again, reinforcing what I said earlier, that I think it's, if I was elected to council, I would see it as being part of the whole council and being a councillor not only for this ward, but for the whole of Merri-bek. And that I would be responsible, in my role, I would make decisions about, along with my colleagues, that would be looking at how does it benefit the whole community. As an example of that, I use the Brunswick gym all the time, and from East Brunswick and go over to Central Brunswick to do that. And I know, and Adam would know, because we share the gym, how squashed and small it's becoming and so popular, to the point that there is some danger going on there, the risk of people being hit and hurt. So I would really like to see that we expand the gym, which is again part of that when we talk about development and housing. We need increased infrastructure, and that's one example. But it's also an example of cross-board work that I would be trying to aim towards. The one plus, yes, there is a risk of getting a dud or someone having to leave because of illness, but I would have thought there'd be a by-election or some process through the VC that would happen if someone had to step down from their council position. The other side of it is that, yeah, but one's single member in one ward, you're very accountable, and I think very, hopefully, approachable, and that you have to be very transparent and very in touch with your community. I think it's a great way to be in touch with the community. Even just in the campaigning, I've been finding that I've just discovered things about this ward that I had no idea about. And I've lived here, as you heard, for 31 years. So I think that we would have to be, I think, keep having a recognition that the council is there for the whole of the municipality.
Question at the back. Thank you. I'm Stan. Just on going back to the thing of open space, a lot of high-rise development happened in East Brunswick, and I understand money's coming in from that development to have open land, open spaces. However, I understand that a lot of that money is spent outside the area. Do you agree that more should be spent inside the region where those high-rise developments are occurring, and what we do to ensure that that actually happens?
Yes, again, I think that relates to what I said before about the importance of infrastructure with housing development. That will ensure that whilst there are some things that we don't, on council level, complete control over, like public transport, which is also cooperating with other levels of government, I think that it's really important that we advocate and really push with developers to ensure, yes, that funding comes through for open space. that, yeah, it happens around where that development is. That's not, I think you're saying it can happen further afield. So I think we need to use innovation and creativity. I really have a strong belief in, as I said, in community development, and so listening to the community. I think it was one of the groups that I've spoken to recently said that we really need to see the community as an asset, and that here in this place, particularly in this Brunswick, where there are so many people in so many varied professions with creativity and a huge ability, that we need to be consulting local communities and say, hey, how would you do this? How would you utilise the open space and money or finance that's available to create those green spaces, as well as bringing in expertise and looking at ways it can be done? Because over the years, I'm sure we've all seen it, the innovation with rooftop gardens, with vertical gardens, water, all sorts of ways that we can have greenery and cooling and more connection to nature and greenery. So that's the approach that I would sort of try to take.
It's an interesting point you raised about I can understand the logic, right? If once a area of the city is densifying, and we can tax those people, we should create open space in that area. What council has done through the park close to home program is map the whole city, and they set a goal for everybody should be able to be within 500-metre walk of a green or open space from their home, or 300 metres if they're in an activity centre where it is more dense. And a lot of, there's both activities. So, that map then helps us identify where there's big red spots in our city where people are really far away from green or open space. So you're right in that some taxes from Brunswick East have maybe created open space in Octoberr, for example, or in Roy. I think that's important. I think we are really lucky here in Brunswick East. I would say that some of that money has gone to improve some of the local parks here. Like I think we recently upgraded our park. So some of that money is being spent locally is the answer, but not all of it. And I think I support the program as it exists because I think once we've plugged in some of those holes, we can then kind of go back to the other areas and create more parks in other areas. And as we continue to densify, there is going to be more need. So I don't think that changed the current system, but it's a fair point that you raised.
Can I just ask a question?
So we have other people before you. Most of them are doing this, but we have other people ready to go.
Should the chair clarify about the open space fund?
So basically, I think it's a public parks and recreation leisure fund. It's a PPR or something. And so when land is subdivided, it goes into that fund, and then council can spend it in our city. It's just, I think the point was, is it going to be the same suburb or the same kind of location versus other parts of the city? Is there anything you want to add?
The one thing BRM would like to add is it was never transparent. And we campaigned some years ago that council actually publish how much is raised in each ward and how much is spent in each ward. And those amounts were a state secret. And we had a campaign some years ago because we felt that Brunswick was getting a lot higher rise development and wasn't having the social services, public transport, aged care, childcare and associated infrastructure that went with it. And council didn't release that information. So just for the record, I think there are questions of transparency about where money is raised, who it's raised from, and where it goes. And just to do a bit of editorialising, we would like our ward councillor to support that sort of transparency, not just on that topic, but on many, because I'll come back to this, there's a whole of hands. Gentlemen in the purple.
I think it's worse than that because the trend with developers now is not to actually subdivide, so they then never pay that public open space rate. So that's part of what my question is about, because if you've got a nature plan, you're saying we're going to have nature and it's going to be here, and you've got to try and corner the developers to do it. And I would argue, I've been interested in this for nearly 50 years, so I can tell you some cases it would be better to take the land and not put the money in the bank for 3 years because property prices have been going up. So the community might get, let's say, $500,000, but the land prices keep going up. So the community has been dudded, and it looks like we're going to be dudded into the future.
I suggest we take this up over the cup of tea afterwards, because I think it's a really interesting discussion. There's a gentleman in a purple shirt who had a hand up a while ago.
Hi, my name's Simon. I'm a Brunswick resident. I am also a disabled person, so I was curious to know what you both think the role of council can be in making, first, council spaces more accessible for disabled people. Not just physical accessibility, but also removing attitudinal barriers. And if you think it's also something you could touch on, how you could influence the broader community to make those spaces more accessible. Thank you.
A very important question. I think for different abled people, accessibility on that physical level is a high priority, and I want to see that happen everywhere, even though I don't have a significant disability. But years ago I had a broken leg, and that was so difficult. Just one step could make your life so challenging in terms of getting around and then having to depend on others to assist you. So I think that's such an important question. I would have it as a high priority that, particularly given that we have a lot of old infrastructure in Merri-bek and in Brunswick in this area, I think wherever possible, whether it's having the ramps available at shops to get in, but also your question, I mean, there's lots of innovation, lots of ways I think those things can be introduced, handrails, all of those things. And accessible tram stops, you know, is a big campaign that I fully support. But I think in terms of attitudinal changes, I'm a big believer, I'm a community educator, through education, through campaigns, and that's why I'm really pushing a really strong, furthering this already strong social cohesion plan that we have in Merri-bek. But I do think that we need to do more community education and have that for people with differing abilities actually do that speaking and getting people involved and saying, hey, this is what our experience is. We need all of us to support yourselves and all of us. We all have integrated, you know, no one is free of different abilities. So we need to think that way, and I think we'll push towards having more education, like health promotion sorts of campaigns. So that is how I would pursue it.
Yeah, I think, so council has a disability reference group, and we have a council officer who kind of works with that group, but also works with kind of that disability programs. I think our council building should be accessible now, but you're right, there's other forms of accessibility. And I think increasingly I'm seeing council officers being more aware of, like, maybe advertising there's some quiet space available for people who might be neurodivergent or, you know, on the spectrum and need some time out from overstimulation. So that's good. And I think a lot of that's been guided by the disability reference group. Councillor Sue Bolton's at the back, who I think sits on that reference group as a councillor. And on that group we have people with range of disabilities as well, so there are different perspectives. We have a lot of old buildings and, you know, very narrow streets, and so it is a bit of a nightmare for people with mobility issues. And I think we just need to keep progressively changing our streets and making them more accessible. There's lots of benefits if you actually look at a street and put a lens of how can the street be better for everybody, or sometimes you have to say this street is going to be mainly for cyclists, or this street is going to be mainly for buses, and this street is going to be mainly for walkers. But actually having that kind of strategy, some changes can benefit. If you extend curves, for example, it's better for accessibility, but it's also better for road safety, because a narrow road changes driver behaviour. It also creates more space for planting, and you can put trees in to create more shade. So, council has a kind of progressive program on that. I'd like to see us speed that up, actually changing our streets and making them more accessible. It's not just for people with disabilities, it's people, older people, or parents with prams. So yeah, that would be one of my goals. Is I think one of the issues with this current council is we haven't had opposition for actually changing our streets and making them safer and greener and, you know, more accessible, and hoping the new council will have a majority that wants to push work in that area.
This is obviously not to run as a war discussion.
Thank you.
Yes, hi, my name is Eliza. I live in Brunswick. Just following on from this gentleman's comment about accessibility, I mean, I think there are quite a few elderly people who live in the neighbourhood as well. And when you're talking about putting garden beds in on nature strips and around trees, that actually restricts the pathways for people to get through. I walk my dog at night, and I would say that actually makes me concerned about my personal safety. A lot of those bushy outcrops that we've got everywhere, and also I use my torch at night because it is very dark and a lot of footpaths are very uneven in this neighbourhood. So, you know, while we're trying to curtail the crisis, I think public safety is something that we need to weigh up as well, and also accessibility, because we encourage diversity, and you know, we want people to enjoy all the amenities they can.
Like I was saying before, it's the local people who are the experts. And this is so important, like community consultation is a great example of that, because, you know, yes, I can say, yes, lovely to have more plants and gardens and trees, but exactly also what I'm saying is it also needs to be in relation to safety, and that's a very important point. I think increased lighting needs to occur on many streets in Merribek, particularly in East Brunswick. But also, the repairing of footpaths is really important. The number where there's stumbling, and that's for everyone, it's a risk for everyone, whether you're differently able or whatever, prams, etc., mobility aids. And so I think that needs to be a high priority in the new council. Whilst I know that on all of the door knocking and communicating I've been doing with people, everyone is saying to me, let's get local, let's do the things that need to happen in a very practical, physical way in the local communities, and that's lighting, repairing footpaths, repairing potholes, and taking into account absolutely accessibility, so that you're not having a risk of a fall or tripping over. And always finding a balance between these things.
Exactly, but I mean, following on, a lot of those garden beds are just full of weeds. They're really poorly maintained. I mean, they're great in theory, but really quite unsightly, and also a lot of people dump rubbish. There is a lot of money on, and I tell them where the rubbish is. And it's out of control actually, because that's the other problem with apartments in the area. They don't have, I think rules have just changed, they can pay for their rubbish to be collected if they move. Before that, they weren't able to have access to that rubbish collection service.
Yeah, and so that's something where we need to, I think that the hard rubbish collection needs to be reviewed, maybe brought back to the original scheme where it was just done twice a year, and make it as easy as possible for people. Okay, it means they've got to take it, but make it as cheap as possible for some of the people's rubbish to be moved to the appropriate places. So I think that you're making some very good points.
Can I put in an advertisement on this walking question? Coming out of the COVID pandemic, Brunswick Residents Network did a big survey about walking in Brunswick. For those of you who haven't seen it, go to our website. It had nearly 1,000 responses from people, and it flagged all the issues you raised about footpaths, about safety in all senses of the word, personal safety, not getting run over, problems, you know, different people walking different ways. It's a piece of work that is a good example about community involvement and community knowledge, so I'd encourage you to have a look at it if you haven't seen it. And I suppose, just to throw that in as a question, both the Labor Party and the Greens have had policies that try and cut residents out of the planning scheme. You know, the Labor Party currently is trying to cut councils out of the planning scheme in some areas. The Greens have supported fast tracking of programs through the scorecard and things like that. What's this tension about, you know, cutting residents out of the planning system? And what would you say you you changing your party policy to go in the opposite direction?
So yeah, I think local communities should always have a say in what happens in their neighbourhoods, so particularly in planning. So the previous term of council, the Greens had tried a new proposal for design excellence scorecard, saying that if development was excellent, like above and beyond good, which is, or adequate, which is the current planning scheme, then they would have that residents' right to be removed. We undid that this term because we heard strong feedback from community members, including the Brunswick Residents Network, that residents shouldn't be locked out of that. And so, yeah, we removed that until it doesn't exist anymore. And what we're seeing increasingly at council is actually we're not being asked to make decisions about planning applications. We're being told that the Minister for Planning, the Labor Victorian Minister for Planning, is taking that off our hands, and we just get to make a little submission with our thoughts and feelings, and maybe they'll take them into consideration. So we actually had a planning meeting last week, and we had one of these applications, and the residents don't have any right to appeal. So they had a right to be notified and had a right to give their feedback, but if they disagree with the minister's opinion, they can't go to feedback. There's no way for them forward. They just have to accept what the one person, that minister decides. Maybe she'll appoint a panel or something sometimes. So yeah, I'm pretty concerned by that. I think residents deserve a local say. We restore those rights at the council level, and we're seeing the Victorian government kind of just increasingly ask us for our views rather than ask us to make a decision. We're meant to be local decision makers elected by local people. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore.
Thank you. I think one of the things I've realised in standing for council, and if I was successful in that, is that how much local councils have to advocate and reach out to other levels of government. And I think that, again, with what I've said earlier, again, local residents are the experts. You know what's going on. If I was elected, I would definitely be pushing and advocating to change some of these things so that there's a lot more resident input, and that local councils are the ones that can really have a say, because they're the ones who know what's happening on the ground. So I think that is a really important aspect that I would certainly be working collaboratively with other councils around and working within the party to change some of those policies. The other thing too that I've had raised to me also is the expense of VCAT. I've experienced that as when I went to look at a local development near my house, and myself and a neighbour, we went to VCAT, and just the costs involved to try and appeal that development were huge. And I thought, gee, if you were a pensioner or just renting somewhere, you just have no chance. So I think that there's a lot of those things that need to be re-looked at and changed more in favour of local people.
So there's a few more hands. Back over here, and then we might have to wrap up because we have a second meeting for Randazzo coming up after a tea break. So, please, the back row. Nick. No. That's easy. Over there. Andrew.
Andrea Bunting. I'm available on Merri-bek. I've heard some. My question is about the budget. I've heard you talk about state of footpaths, we need to spend more, lighting, we need to spend more, blah, blah, blah. Street lighting budget, I understand, is about $30,000 a year, maybe council correctly, and there was an opportunity last year to double that, but one of the options at the council meeting, the council didn't go for that. Last year, the footpath budget was reduced by 10%. I've been arguing over many years that it be indexed to inflation, like many other items in the budget.
Could we come to a question?
My question is, will you undertake to restore the footpath budget and index it to inflation and double the very minuscule, maybe triple it, street lighting budget? Should
Streetlighting budget, potentially. Yeah, I think, I don't think you've raised that with me before about the specific budget, but I'm open to looking if we can spend more money on street lighting. It has to be, with street lighting, you've got to be careful not to just have it on all the time because it can be really disturbing for wildlife as well, so it needs to be much activated.
It's just the budget so that we can actually get these projects.
Yeah.
DSS with all the
And in terms of footpaths, I have to look into this. It may be that it was reduced because of a very complicated accounting thing where we had to, well, it was actually a big mistake on council's behalf around developer contributions. We had to achieve all these projects that 10 years ago we told the state government would achieve, but we hadn't achieved them all. And so to do that in a 3-year time period, I think they had to really reprioritise the capital works program. So, for example, we've invested a lot more in our playgrounds than we usually do because they were on our list. We might have had to cut some money from the footpaths to do that. That would be my bet because I don't think we'd ever spend less on doing footpaths because we know how important improving the safety of footpaths and the evenness of them is to community members. So I suspect that might be right. I'm happy to look into that further.
And index it to inflation in the future?
Yeah, I'm happy to look into that. We did that with the walking and riding per head budget, so it makes sense to. It's definitely an area of need, right? So it makes sense to.
So I would certainly, if I was elected, look into that absolutely. And because I can hear what you're saying, I think it's it agrees in all of those things are in principle what I'm supporting in my policies and needing to look at what's appropriate budgetary-wise, but to do things like increase according to indexation and so on. And there would need to be some sort of exceptional reason why that wouldn't happen. But on principle, I would want to increase and do it listening.
Oh yes, I guess it's specifically more for Adam's question because Adam, you mentioned the scorecard and the feedback you got. And I guess the question is, what direction are the other schemes going in? For example, 2 dwellings on a lot got through very recently, 4 months ago, went through the chamber. So this is like a big smart thing where council's not just tailoring its scheme, it's tailoring its avenues. Now other councils tend not to do this, they're the first to do like a private, smart thing. But I will say that it's actually a very watered down version of the one we originally put up to panels that we went to give feedback on. So in general, what direction will Merri-bek take in its, I guess, its hunt and the community support of exemplary design, which we totally support and we support the accessibility principles in design. But what direction will you take it in, given that sometimes the expense or the flip side is giving up numerical standards and like trading off with the developer. So I guess what direction will Merribek take from here, given that we've got a tailored avenue now?
I think, well, I don't think there will be any appetite of council to. So when the current planning scheme that is set by the Victorian government only requires adequate development, and it's not good for communities, but it's also not good for the environment, it's not good for the climate. We should be building dwellings that are more accessible for people, that are much more sustainable, and that are affordable as well. And it's really hard to do that in the current planning scheme. So Merribek Council has had a history of looking at how can we make tweaks to the planning process to try and encourage better quality development. So all our neighbourhoods benefit, but also the climate and environment benefit as well. The Design Excellence Scorecard in the previous term sought to do that by removing kind of resident rights. And this term we undid that because we heard the feedback. So I don't think we'll look at doing that any further, like removing resident rights. I don't think there'll be appetite in council for that. What we recently did, are you talking about better quality developments of cheap blocks? Yeah. Yeah, so that's providing kind of a checklist. It's just basically helping to speed up the admin process for development to make it cheaper and more accessible to build better quality developments and blocks. So it's not removing resident rights to complain, it's just kind of compressing some of that decision making time further if there's like specific concerns about that. But I guess I'm just trying to say, I don't think we'll go down that taking resident rights path anymore. There's no appetite for that. So, but if there's concerns about how council officers can speed up their sections, happy to speak about those. The whole intention is to get that quality down. Correctly.
I don't have the details and expertise that Adam has, or that you have about it, but in principle what I'm hearing is, again, I really absolutely support anything that increases residents' rights and say in these things, but to also ensure a balance of equality, and that we just don't want to do just anything for the sake of having dwellings. It's not beneficial in the long term, and we need to try to work out ways that are more efficient ways of planning and ensuring that council and local residents have a say, and that we do have environmentally sound and quality building occurring.
We've got lots of hands, but I can only take two more because we do have another panel tonight. Okay, there's someone at the back first and then here. Then we're going to have to wrap up this session. We'll give the speakers a chance to do a final wrap-up, a couple of minutes to say any final comments. So,
yeah, I'm just before talking about consultation before, I'm one of the organisers of this meeting, and I was looking at my question for the announcement, which is the Scout, the wonderful 5th Brunswick Scouts have let us have their meeting room free for this meeting, and so far we've collected for them $13, so we'd like to see that maybe tenfold by the end of the meeting. And my question is, in recent years, council staff have shied away from having public meetings as a form of consultation. And when they'd asked, did finally get in and have one, they divided everyone into little groups and just talked about neighbours, which is lovely. But will you consider advocating within the council to have public meetings, because it is a great way for everyone to have a discussion in a big group and maybe even come to a conclusion about what they want.
Yeah, I can do that. I think it's I love Parks and Rec, and I love a good Parks and Rec town scene, and I'd love to listen to those out in person as well. That's just a bad joke. I think we had a town hall through the Skyway, or Brunswick Skyway community process. Is that what you're talking about? They're broken up into small. Okay. I missed that one. I was out when one was sick. But yes, that was the most recent town hall we had. But I take your point. But actually, yeah, it wasn't the same town hall format.
Yes, wholeheartedly. It's something that came up in some discussions with some of the people. I've been having discussions with some of the groups here tonight, and I think there's got to be more ways to get residents' opinions. You know, not just surveys that only some people fill out. I think public forums, meeting together face to face, and looking at there's at maybe more innovative online ways and so on. There's a whole range of ways that people can contribute and connect with each other. But I think there's nothing like face to face, and people having the opportunity to ask those questions. And yes, I agree, working towards something that there might be some conclusions or decisions made on that basis. So I would absolutely wholeheartedly support that. I'm a social worker. That's what we do.
Don Anderson, I live in East Brunswick, a stone's throw from Fleming. I have watched the Grandstand rebuild a few years ago. It's got no roof. It's been beautifully done. It's got no roof. When it rains, you get very wet. When the sun shines, the slanting of the fake roof just goes right in your face. I hope that you two will commit strongly to put a roof on the thing.
Because the thing is that if homeless people want shelter, there's more shelter on the other side of the you don't need to do that to protect them from people who want to make a home.
I'll take it as a comment rather than a question, and leave you to earbash the candidates over tea, because we're coming to that time. Before I hand over for their final comments, I want to thank you for coming tonight. We do have a second session at 7:30 for our Dudso Award. We have a couple of councillors who are about to go through that again. support. So if you can spare some folding money, if not, some coins, there's a bucket in the back. For those that haven't signed up to our monthly newsletter, there's a sign-up form. We don't spam people, but we tell people what's going on in the community. So please leave your email if you'd like to get our monthly newsletter from the Brunswick Residents Network. I want to acknowledge John, who's been filming tonight, and will be we put up the 2 meetings from last week on our Facebook page. We're encouraging people who couldn't come out tonight, share the word, and if you want to see what other councils are saying, it's up on the Brunswick Residents Network Facebook page. And finally, thanks to all those who helped tonight. There's tea and coffee and toilets at the back if you want it for a break. But I might just hand over for 2 minutes each to say your final wrap-up and comments. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening tonight and asking your great questions. I would be a really committed councillor if I was elected, proudly Labor endorsed. I really believe in workers' rights and unionism, and to ensure that not only council workers having been well paid, etc., but also that all those organisations such as YMCA with their personal trainers at the gym being well paid and good conditions. So there's just an example. Let's have some consistency across the board. I would really be there to listen to people. That would be my main aim, to hear from all of you as I've been doing and getting to know what are the key issues and finding ways for you to all to contribute to those issues at a local level, to really hear you. And as I said, you're the experts. We all live here. We can contribute in that way and we put forward some great ideas. Advancing social cohesion is a major one that I'd like to keep pursuing. Because after the Yes campaign, to see the racism that occurred, that I worked with Adam on as well, we can hold ourselves proud in this area that we are against all of that, and we do not want people vilified. So we're really trying to work to be balanced in my approach by wanting to undertake the need for affordable housing at the same time and development, at the same time recognising that people still live here and have to live with that development, and where to ensure that we've got as much as we can adequate infrastructure and all the things you've mentioned tonight. So I would really see myself as being very approachable. One thing I really would like to do is many people have said to me that council doesn't respond to them. Don't get even an electronic response about an issue or making a phone call. I'd like to make sure that people are responded to and that they get answers to their queries or needing to fix things within a timely period. So I'd really like to try and work towards that. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thank you everyone for coming along, and thank you to the Brunswick Residents Network for organising this important part of our local democracy. Thank you, Jenne, for being a lovely political opponent. Not all political opponents are as lovely as you. So, there was a moment at Brunswick Past that Jenne and I were kind of using the same machines, facing each other, and there's some other tug of war, and Jenne's like, we need to get a photo. But yes, it's been a great evening, a great conversation. It's been a great privilege of my life to be mayor of this beautiful city this year, and I would love the opportunity to keep doing this work. I'm proud of my track record. I know that there's a lot more work that needs to be done to make our community an even better place to live. And yeah, we'd love your vote so I can keep doing this work. I've got the experience, the energy, the passion, and I hope you feel the same way and trust me with your vote. Thanks everybody.
Thank you to the candidates. People may not know there's a postal ballot, and so the mail-out begins on Tuesday, so keep an eye on your post box and hope that no one does what happened last time. Your postal ballot must be in the mail by 6 o'clock on Friday the 25th. So they're sending them out in batches. It won't be all next week, but you have to get it in by the Friday the 25th. in the mud by 6 o'clock, and election results will be declared no